The global food prices fell slightly in December last year as the food price index of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations averaged 125.7 points. Ted George, Chief Narrative Officer at Kleos Advisory, joins me for an update on the commodities market. Ted, many thanks for joining us today. Let's get right to it, starting with the food prices, the surge we saw in 2021 and that pullback we saw towards the end of the year. Just help us understand the key drivers of that surge and, if you think that could continue in 2022.
Well, absolutely. I think it could. I mean, we saw wheat hitting a 10-year high in November last year. It's fallen back a bit, but it's still very high. And even though maize took a slump in the middle of last year, it's been rising again. It's still about 50% up on where it was before the pandemic. And of course, these are crops that people depend on. People eat, urban environment, and also elsewhere in Africa. But I think the thing is, if you look at the situation in Africa, it depends where you are. If you're in South Africa, thanks to the impact of La Nina, they've had a fantastic crop. I think the best in 40 years. There's plenty of maize in that region. But if you're in Nigeria and you're importing maize and wheat, yes, it's expensive. And there's a question about, can you actually get the wheat that you want? So it depends where you are, and that can have a real impact on livelihoods where food makes up a huge part of the budget.
Well, let's quickly talk about cocoa prices. We saw some volatility also in 2021, but prices appear to have been flat since mid-December of last year. But do you foresee a spike ahead? Things appear to be quiet for now.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, I think the thing is there's plenty of cocoa on the market. We saw prices weaken sort of October, November, because a lot of people were selling off their positions. But since then, buying has risen as well. The thing is that it looks like Omicron is burning itself out. It's not going to have this huge impact on the world market. If that means people are getting out, it means people are consuming more chocolate. So the thing is, there's plenty of chocolate. West Africa just had another great season for cocoa, and there's plenty of cocoa products. But most manufacturers only stock enough for the next few months. So if demand shoots up and suddenly the cocoa is not in the right place in the world, we could see prices go up. So I think more yo-yoing in 2022.
But aren't there also concerns about the emergence of other variants of the COVID-19?
Absolutely, and this is the whole thing. I mean, I even heard the appalling idea that apparently there's been a merger of Delta and Omicron, Deltacron. The thing is that it always evolves anyway with the virus. Yes, absolutely, there are going to be other variants. They probably exist already anyway. The point is, it appears the virus is evolving to become less dangerous, but you never know. So all I think I can say is if I compare to where I was or where we were 1 year ago, I was in lockdown here in the UK. Here we are functioning, but hey, there are restrictions. So let's hope that continues and the business continues this year.
Okay, well, let's talk about coffee. We saw prices hovering around historic highs in 2021 also, both for the Robusta and the Arabica beans. Talk to us about the key drivers of the surge for those beans and also your forecast for this year.
Yeah, well, I think it's a supply issue and a supply chain issue. The supply issue is Brazil. That's the largest producer of bulk Arabica for the world and for Robusta as well. They had bad weather, uncertain crop. That really affects it. But also the other thing is the supply chain, because one thing is in Ethiopia, there's been a lot of disruption because of the conflict. That's a major exporter of quality Arabica. And then Vietnam, it's got so expensive now to ship from Vietnam coffee to, let's say, the Mediterranean. It's just not worth it. So that's led to a drop in supply, and that's why prices are so high. But it is an opportunity for West Africa, because actually freight prices from West Africa to the Mediterranean have only gone up a little bit. So countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Nigeria, Guinea, Liberia, all of them export coffee. All of them can do so to higher prices in the Mediterranean at the moment.
Okay, let's quickly talk about the sustainability issues, ESG, and how that impacts or is impacting the soft commodity value chain or commodity chain, particularly in Africa. What impact do you think these new sustainability regulations could have on Africa's soft commodity producers this year?
Well, I think it's going to have a huge impact. I mean, after COP26, all these regulations being brought in by the European Union, by the US as well, about not having forced labor or forestry destruction linked to a commodity, they're very serious. And the simple answer is everyone's going to have to up their game. Everyone's going to have to get serious about how they monitor sustainability, which means impact on the environment, but also the people who work in the value chain, whether it's in the fields, in the factories, through the various different parts of transport. So the thing is, the big companies around the world, they really want to help here, and they want to help other businesses become sustainable. But if you don't transition to a sustainable model, in 5 years, you may not be allowed to trade.
Well, that being said, how much monitoring is actually going on, on the ground, if we're going to be taking numbers and, trying to ascertain who's, falling in line, who's playing by the rules, etc.?
It's very small. So the thing is, if you look at something like cocoa, let's say Cote d'Ivoire or Ghana, it could be 40, maybe even 50% of the crop is certified, but that's different levels of it was supposedly produced in a sustainable way. But there's so much cocoa, which isn't, I don't know, it's probably 70 to 80% in the world is not certified. And many things like sugar, maize, rice, not at all. And rice, of course, is a huge producer of methane, which is even worse when it comes to greenhouse gases. So the thing is, I mean, all of them have that kind of impact, and all of the different commodities are under the spotlight.
Now, even with this sustainability measured, of course, to protect the environment better, etc., we're still experiencing adverse effects of climate change. To what extent do we expect that to change cycles this year or affect crops and supply chains, etc.?
Absolutely. Well, look, we have La Nina this year. It's coming into its second year. That's not unusual. Now, La Nina usually disrupts weather, but what it does bring is it tends to bring actually better weather, certainly to West Africa in terms of rains, and also to Southern Africa, which is why we saw these great crops last year. But the thing is, La Nina is an uncertain weather event. Sometimes it just brings surprises. And with all these other things going on in the world, it's just like it could be a super La Nina. So there's uncertainty there in terms of the rainfall patterns, but there's huge opportunities in terms of it for all of the different commodities, because commodity prices generally are very high at the moment. And if the world is opening up after COVID, they're just going to rise more because the demand is there.